In early September of 2015, a series of budget hearings were held in Chicago. It was something Mayor Emanuel promised during his re-election. But since the school closing hearings, no one believed anymore in the pretense that the city government actually cared about town hall democracy. Confrontations between Chicago workers and the political servants of the capitalists were now raw and in the open. At this meeting on the South Side, the hand-picked moderator was clearly in the mayor's camp.
As a faith leader, I stand before you.
But the audience was fed up with these dog and pony shows. She began lecturing them, lest they failed to show respect to their abusers.
I would like for all of you to represent us well here in South Shore tonight, as we will speak with respect and we will represent our community well. And at this time, I would like to say, if you're a member of South Shore community, say yes. Are we here for unity tonight? Say yes. All right. Now,
well, she got her answer. Nobody wanted unity written on a blank check. They came to do political battle with the mayor.
First, I would like to also welcome the aldermen who have come here. Our host alderman, Alderman Leslie Hairston. Alderman Michelle Harris. I don't think that it serves you well or that it reflects you well.
And anyone else having to do with city government was also shown contempt.
Alderman David Moore and Alderman Pat Dow. Thank you all, aldermen, for coming.
Foremost on the people's minds was the issue of Dyett High School, a rallying point for opposing charter schools replacing neighborhood public schools. At the time of the meeting, a hunger strike was underway to force the mayor to reopen Dyett as an open enrollment, global leadership, green technology school. Over the years, the Chicago Board of Education deliberately strangled Dyett enrollment. Then the board offered a cynical reason for opposing the hunger strikers' demands. Here's board member Dorothy Hines. Hines asks, where is Dyett going to get students?
My question also would be to Global Leadership Academy, is where are they going to get their children from? Because right now, there are not that many kids in the neighborhood. That would be the only question I have.
The CPS board is appointed by Mayor Emanuel, and he played an important role in undermining communities and schools like Dyett, causing their student population numbers to drop.
So I would refer you to the plan of the Coalition to Revitalize Dyett, and they'll talk to you about, the enrollment numbers and all those kinds of things. That is a plan that is put together by an amazing consortium of educators that represent some of the best institutions in our city. But more importantly, I would urge folks at CPS to be honest about why we even have this question of population in the first place. So Mayor Rahm Emanuel was the vice chair of the Chicago Housing Authority when the plan for transformation was first developed and unrolled in the late 90s, early 2000s. And yet when we were closing schools on the South Side, there was no conversation about public housing. There was no conversation about how we had torn down the projects all over State Street, torn down Ida B. Wells. And then people woke up one day and said, oh, why are these buildings so empty, without having a conversation about the same interwoven structures of racism, inequality, and neoliberalism in the city. And so, CPS can crunch the numbers all they want, and at the same time, I think that there needs to be a broader, more honest reckoning about how and why we got here.
We have been here.
Back at the South Side hearing, critics of the mayor lined up at the mics.
My name is Nicholas Limbeck. I'm a Chicago public school teacher. I'm hearing we have to be respectful, but us teachers and the people of Chicago, we're not feeling respected. I'm told I deserve a 10% pay cut. I don't feel respected with that. And I know that there's other options besides soaking us with all these regressive taxes and fees, and I wanted to see if you, Mayor, would consider taxing the rich in some form, the people that can afford it. maybe some of the loopholes and tax breaks that corporations get in the city, if you would look at those to fill our budget hole, if you would look at perhaps some kind of
Can you conclude?
progressive property tax that would tax people that of a certain higher income. Would you look at that? I was wondering if you could answer. Thank you.
Throughout the meeting, it was clear that the answer to the city's budget problems was make the rich pay, as far as the community was concerned.
There is a revenue, stock, commodity, or options transaction exemption tax act in the Illinois state legislature that can be amended. One line of that piece of legislation can be amended that will generate millions of dollars for the city and erase the budget deficit. You should go to the legislator, just like you went to the legislator to expand photo enforcement, to ask them to amend that transaction exemption tax and bring revenues to the city of Chicago and get rid of this program. Thank you.
My name is Michael Brunson. I'm one of the officers of Chicago Teachers Union. I just want to say one thing real quick. I noticed on that PowerPoint that 5% of your revenue was coming from fees and fines. Come on now, I live on the south side. With those red light cameras, those stoplight cameras, the boots, the fees, the fines, the tickets and all of that, there's too much money being taken off the backs of the people in our communities. Too much money. Right down the street, right downtown, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, there are over 125 million contracts being traded and they are not taxed. I'm saying that you should have a financial transaction tax here in the city of Chicago. That's where the money is.
Thank you, Mr. Brunson.
That's where the money is.
Thank you.
And in general, the audience was not buying the official narrative of the city's problems.
But what these 6 clinics we have now, we need to have more funding for mental health, because nobody wake up in the morning say I'm gonna kill somebody. When it comes to black people and Latino, y'all say it's gang banging. But what about when the white folks do it? You say it's mental illness.
Can you conclude?
Something is wrong with that picture, because everything
I need you to conclude.
in life.
Where the Head Start is appreciative, we still have children that are in jeopardy of being left alone or possibly shot and killed in the city of Chicago. We need you to make some type of other provision to secure our children. I live in Bronzeville. I pay high taxes. I work hard to pay the city of Chicago my debts. There have been no provisions made for us going through the situation that we're going through. Yet, we are still keeping these children. Our doors are still open and nothing has been made. We need something better put on the table for child care providers.
Totally fed up with the city's pretense that workers had any say-so as citizens, the meeting came to a boil, and then boiled over.
This is all a game, so you can say that I came and asked them. You sitting up there with an expression on your face the whole time, talking about, they just talking, I ain't worried about it, I'm gonna do what I wanna do. That's the problem. You forget who you work for. You got all these cats standing around here with our money on your security. What corporation do you know? What corporation do you know
conclude?
That the employee is held to a higher standard than the people he worked for? Nobody but in the city of Chicago and with that mayor right there.
Thank you.
These people have been on hunger strike for 17 days. 17 freaking days. You said 48 hours. It's been 48 hours since they met with you. When are you going to give them a response? When are you going to give them a response? We want a response, and we want it now.
It was said in that meeting that there would be some resolve in a couple of days. Well, it's been a couple of days. And for those 2 days, we've still been waiting for some resolve. And we want you to know, Mr. Mayor, that we are firm in our resolve, and we want to make absolutely sure that the plan for Dyett comes from Bronzeville. Bronzeville has spoken. We don't want any old plan, but we want the Bronzeville plan so that they can have the community school, the open enrollment school, not just any open enrollment school, but the plan that was given by Bronzeville. And it is important, we do not want and we will not accept a plan that will be supported by some so-called black leaders who was not with us when we began this plan in the first place.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lois Ashford.
Won't take it no more. Won't take it no more.
City officials at that point could no longer control the meeting, and the police quickly moved the mayor out of the hall as the community took over the podium.
Well, the mayor was holding a budget hearing, and he was not responding to the community that was asking him why he was cutting programs for our most vulnerable people, whether it's mental health clinics, special education programs, and ignoring the community that have fought for Dyett High School. And he's always listened to his banker friends, his millionaire, billionaire friends. He's protected them. He's handed over hundreds of millions of dollars in toxic swap, but yet he turns around, blames everybody else, and does not take responsibility for being an advocate for everyone in the city of Chicago. Got to the point where he was just not responding to the dire, very important demands of the people regarding the Dyett hunger strikers. They're on day 17, and he has ignored their pleas. And it got to the point where the people said, that's it. You're either going to respond and you're going to listen to their demands, or this meeting is over. And they shut it down. This meeting was done. He had to be escorted. He had to be escorted by security. He left the meeting, and the meeting was stopped.
The following night, another budget hearing was held at Wright College.
Our city and our state has never faced this confrontation of the current fiscal crisis in which we're in.
Would this North Side audience be more sympathetic to the mayor than the South Side community the night before?
And we're going to go ahead and get started.
First batter up.
My name is Marta Popadiak. I grew up in Albany Park, and I love Chicago. It's the place where my family planted roots after fleeing martial law in Poland and held my family up when we were falling down. My father died when I was 5, leaving my mom to raise 2 kids on her own on $11,000 a year. Without public assistance, I don't know how we would have made it. So when I see these services being defunded, I wonder what we would have done. My mom works hard. She always has. She's been bootstrapping as a house cleaner since she was 19. And it is not fair that my mom pays a higher proportion of her taxes than her rich clients. It's not fair that she lives in fear of higher rents because the property tax increase will affect her wealthy counterparts more. It's not fair that my mom, with her poverty wage salaries, pays more taxes than Boeing, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. How dare you prioritize the interests of large corporations over the needs of people like my mom and other folks in this room? Thank you.
Thank you, Marta.
The mayor and his media echo chamber had been saying that working people would have to make sacrifices during the budget crisis. But people at the floor mics rejected that. They said, stop the mismanagement and make the rich pay.
Now we're talking about a $450 to $550 million property tax increase, which is a 60% tax levy. What about a 20% pay decrease for all department heads? And what about eliminating redundant departments? What about redundant positions, assistant directors, deputies, personnel managers, and assistant secretaries? And I'm talking about real cuts, not Mr. Claypool's layoffs totaling $1 million from schools and then rehiring middle managers for $1.2 million. What about reviewing spending projects?
Thank you, Ms. Vesperma. Thank you.
I'm holding up a brochure for Malcolm X Community College. I spoke about it last night. You're selling it for $18 million. Imagine Wright College sold for $18 million. If you take all the 7 community colleges, are you suggesting that they're only worth $150 million? Why? We're 7 acres of land and a beautiful school in the heart of the medical district. We could be training and creating jobs and better educated, and you've given that away when they have all those parking lots that they certainly could have built their ice rink on. You're giving away charter schools for $1. You're giving it away for $1. What's going on? Is it $10, $20? It's still a giveaway. There's potential for more federal grants in this city. You know that, and we're missing out on a lot of that. You gave $100 million for creative transportation to build 4 blocks of Riverwalk in front of Donald Trump's building. Crazy, $100 million for 4 blocks of our Riverwalk.
Thank you, Mr. Wool. Thank you very much for your comments.
CPS can sue Bank of America in state court to recover hundreds of millions of dollars in losses from toxic swap deals. Mr. Mayor, hold these banks accountable. We spend over, in closing, we hold banks, both the Daley and your administration, the Chicago Board of Education, CPS, and especially our aldermen, accountable for negligence and conspiring to defraud Chicago taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin.
This is the same administration that saw fit to back and support police officers who have repeatedly been involved in actions harming our citizens. They've been involved in sexual assault and murders, paying out huge settlements, and refusing to hold these officers accountable for their actions. It's the same administration that refused to fund the neighborhood public school system, such as schools like Dyett that you closed 6 years ago and now are trying to reopen under the wrong proposal.
Also, the Dyett hunger strikers on the south side had not been forgotten.
Hi, I'm here in support of the Dyett 12. Rahm Emanuel, shame on you. Enough is enough. It's 18 days. We want an answer, and we want it now. We're sick and tired of your games. And guess what? If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down. We are Dyett. We are Dyett.
My name is Rosemary Vega. I'm just a mom, and in Rahm's eyes, a nobody. As clearly, you could see this meeting is like any other of Rahm's process. All his VIP, all his 1%, they're all in the front. We, the public, this is a public meeting, and we waited 2-3 hours in line to be able to get in. You're sitting there pretty while we got 12 people in our city about to die. In our class, world-class city, under your clock. And you're sitting there so heartless, looking pretty. We understand. Unlike that lady from Humboldt Park, I too am from Humboldt Park, and I don't thank you for gentrifying my community. I don't. You closed our schools, our public schools. When you say that budget fall we're going to go into, does that include the $55 million you gave away to the DePaul Center? Does it include that?
Ms. Vega, I have to ask you to conclude, please. Thank you, Ms. Vega, very much. Jeremy.
They turned off Rosemary Vega's mic as she began to talk about school cuts and closings. But other speakers continued where she left off.
I am going to cede my turn to Georgia Waller, a teacher from Beard, a special education teacher from Beard School.
Good evening. Special education has been cut to the bone. Although some of the cuts have been restored, we're just picking winners and losers with the others. There are 2 schools in this area right here, Beard and Vaughn. Beard services children with special needs 3 years old. They lose $600,000. The banks get $200 million. I have a request for you, Mayor. 1, will you visit the schools and get a first-hand look at how these cuts are affecting these students? And 2, will you declare that special education cuts are off limits? Now, I say this with all the sincerity in the world to you, Mayor. We're not asking you to do this just because you're mayor. We're asking you to do this with the soul and the conviction of a father that would do anything in his power to help his child. So do the right thing, Mayor. Help those kids, put that funding back in special ed.
Thank you, Ms. Georgia.
They've been attacked because they see special ed as being too expensive. They see it as like class size, arts education, physical ed, things that are considered like auxiliary, not as important as like math or reading.
Thank you, Mr. Perlman. Thank you for your comment.
If there's an issue in funds, we need to tax the rich.
Thank you, Mr. Perlman. Ms. Tammy Vinson. Miss Tammy Vinson.
I'm a special ed teacher. I teach in the Austin area. I've witnessed the disinvestment in our schools. I've witnessed the lack of caring about our students. I've witnessed the fact that the resources that students need to progress as kindergartners and special needs, they're being told that they've peaked at 8 years old. So how can we, as a humane people, not care about our children? So public education is a right. So we've been doing everything we can through CTU, through other community groups, to get across to our elected officials that you have to respect us. You were elected to represent us, and when is that going to happen? We need it to happen.
Thank you, Ms. Vinson.
My name is Anna Bulletin, and I am a special ed teacher in a low incidence cluster program in the city of Chicago. If you're not aware, a low incidence cluster program is a program that services students with our most severe disabilities, students with Down syndrome, autism, intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, and medical fragility. My school lost 3 aides for 3 classrooms servicing 33 students, and we're expected to deal with these. Meanwhile, DePaul University, a private institution, got more than $50 million for a basketball stadium. Why are my students suffering? Why is their success not ensured? Because a private institution that most of the city will not set foot in is getting funded for a basketball stadium.
Thank you, Ms. Bulletin. Ms. Sarah Chambers. Ms. Chambers, please begin.
Rahm Emanuel, my students are here with a warrant for your arrest for crimes against 54,000 special education students. By cutting special education, you are breaking IDEA. You are breaking special education law. You talk about shared sacrifice. Who is really having these sacrifices? Your banker buddies are not making sacrifices. My students are having to sacrifice their education. $200 million is how much CPS is giving to banks and toxic swaps. $200 million is how much you cut for special education. Rahm, you are choosing your banker buddies over my students with disabilities, and my school lost a special education teacher because of these budget cuts. You need to renegotiate these toxic swaps and give to education, give to our students, and not your banker buddies.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. Thank you, Ms. Chambers.
The citywide rejection of the mayor's proposed budget exposed the crisis of the ruling class and their viceroy, Rahm Emanuel. Rahm was forced into a runoff in early 2015 to get reelected, and he did beat his opponent, Chuy Garcia. But Chuy's campaign was a confusing and diluted attempt to break from the political machine. It's worth looking more closely at the voting data. Rahm got 56% of the vote, and Chuy got 44%. However, of the people eligible to vote, only 40% actually voted. This meant that the percentage of the eligible electorate who actually voted for Rahm was 22%. It bears repeating. Only 22% of Chicago's eligible voters supported Rahm. And this was after $24 million got spent. Extremely unpopular policies are being imposed through the person of a mayor voted in by less than a quarter of the eligible electorate.
This is all a game, so you can say that I came and asked them. You sitting up there with an expression on your face the whole time talking about, they just talking. I ain't worried about it. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Rahm Emanuel, my students are here with a warrant for your arrest for crimes against 54,000 special education students.
And on both the South Side and the North Side, growing numbers have no faith in the city's political system and only contempt for its representatives. It's a city at the tipping point.